I welcome you for today's webinar, which is being organized by the Europe Direct office Gozo. As the host structure of Europe Direct, I'm happy to chair this webinar. We can see that digitalization is at the core of the initiatives that the European Union is taking at the moment in order to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. Digital transformation is in fact one of the main topics of the Conference of the Future of the European Union. What is the Conference of the Future of the European Union? It's basically a lot of discussions that are presently going on within the European Union to discuss various important topics, where the European Union has selected a number of topics which it considers important for its future. And in fact, digital transformation is one of them. The Conference of the Future of the European Union is a unique and timely opportunity for European Union citizens to debate on Europe's challenges and priorities. And since we are considering digital transformation as one of the priorities that we are discussing today, we hope that this webinar will create that interest and discussions that will help to further examine this topic. Today, we are talking about an important subject, which is digital marketing and the role of content creators. One of the changes brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic has surely been an increase in the efforts of businesses on digitalization. Businesses could not reach its customers through physical contact. So many businesses who before did not consider digitalization important now had to do quite a lot of effort and speed up their efforts to put their presence digitally. This has opened a number of opportunities in the area. And today we are going to see what these areas mean with two experts in the field, Rickey Bugeja and Jo Caruana. To this end, they will be the first part, they will be speaking about their roles. I would like to introduce first our first speaker, Rickey Bugeja. He's a seasoned communication professional with an academic and industry background in media, audiovisual production, marketing, journalism, corporate communications, and public relations. He is currently working as head of digital marketing with award-winning agency Caron Limited and as director of photography with Rickey Bugeja Studios. Rickey's main focus across both roles is the creation of high-quality textual, photographic, and audiovisual content, along with strategic digital marketing of the sent content to reach the widest and most relevant audience in the most cost-effective manner. Apart from developing and implementing cross-platform marketing campaigns for clients, Rickey also delivers corporate seminars, keynote presentations, consults and manages Caron's training division, and which provides bespoke digital marketing and sales courses tailored to clients. So I introduce you, Rickey, for you to explain more to our audience your role within this area.
Thank you, Daniel, and good morning, everyone. First of all, your introduction basically summarized everything, even though it's a pretty vast introduction. Basically, as you've correctly said, my role is predominantly as head of digital marketing with Caron Limited, where we obviously take care of our clients from a marketing perspective in a 360-degree manner. So we look at both online and offline digital communication opportunities, as well as the best way to develop, promote and leverage their brand to both a local and international audience whenever necessary. And also, on the other hand, as you've also mentioned, I'm also a content creator myself, so I'm in the sphere of producing audiovisual content, both for myself and as well as for brands, clients, couples, whatever is needed. So I kind of approach this role from a two-pronged kind of view. As you've correctly said, just to kind of like go back a bit on perhaps my introduction, I graduated back in 2012, which seems like an age ago. And since then, it wasn't a very standard, how can I say, introduction to the work force for me. So I first of all went into journalism, where I worked as a video journalist. And then I moved slowly into sales and marketing and the kind of like the front line of a business when it comes to selling products or services or whatever was needed at the time. Since then, obviously, I've joined King. Over the time, I started off as a social media manager. And earlier on this year, after 3 years of working with them, I was promoted to head of digital. My role at the moment is kind of like a more overarching strategic approach where I am introduced to clients and their goals as such. And we take a look at how we can possibly either improve their online presence or reach out to a wider audience or convert more leads, generate more sales, whatever their goal is. We look at digital ways of achieving those goals. And that's my primary role at the moment. As you correctly mentioned, I'm also kind of like very heavily involved in our training division, which we've been developing as well more recently, where we as a company are offering bespoke training courses from anything from sales to CRM to social media to digital marketing, SEO, whatever is needed. We kind of come in and fill in those information gaps within our clients' companies. So that's basically what I'm doing at the moment. As such, I don't think I have anything else to add unless you have any particular questions. If you do, we can always cycle back and I'll fill you in, no problem.
Thank you, Rickey. Thank you very much. I would now like to introduce you to our second speaker for today. Jo Caruana is the founder and the CEO of the Finesse Group. The group's various arms work together on every aspect of the client journey, from content, marketing, and communications to customer care training and business etiquette. Jo is not only the founder and CEO of the Finesse Group, but she is also a writer, editor, actress, and presenter as well. So Jo, I leave up to you to explain further your role.
Thank you so much, and good morning, everyone. Great pleasure to be here. I apologize if you hear any strange noises from this side of the world. I'm in the UK at the moment, and I live on a boat. One of my favorite things about my job and my life is that it gives me complete freedom to live anywhere I want in the world. And as such, I run the company from a number of different locations in the world, and today happens to be the English countryside on a boat. Another boat just went past and shoved this one, so you might have heard that, so apologies to Rickey if it impacted your lovely speech in any way, but if not, onwards I go, just to explain a little bit more about my role. And like Rickey, I came to running my company, and I came to content creation from a journalism background. I started as a journalist when I was 17 years old at the Malta Independent, and it was an incredible education, baptism of fire, working as a journalist full-time for a national newspaper. All sorts of crazy stories from those early days. And I then studied journalism in Edinburgh, worked briefly for the BBC on a show called Watchdog, which is a consumer affairs program that investigates bad customer care and other consumer issues. I found that absolutely fascinating. And then I returned to Malta after that stint in London, a little bit unsure of what I was going to do. But what happened was it was the birth of the content era. Just as the internet was becoming more and more important, and more traditional forms of journalism were starting to move to the side, very unfortunately, in my opinion, but it was a natural progression to sort of things becoming very online focused. This term "content is king" started to become important. People started to say content is king online, and it's true. Suddenly, everywhere we realized that we needed words, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about that evolution in my presentation in a bit. But it led me to form a company called Write Me Anything, which is still in business. Really, we've just recently rebranded to the Finesse Group and expanded our reach. And today, I am very privileged to work with clients all over the world. The majority of our clients are in the UK and the US, although of course we still have our Malta base, and the majority of my team is based in Malta. But we work with clients in every sector imaginable, from AI to hospitality to luxury products to my particular favorite, which is the culture and arts sector. And we help them with everything from writing their website, creating the content for their website, to writing their social media, to doing all of their public relations, and essentially getting their name and their brand out there, very much like Rickey was talking about. So we come to things very much from a words perspective. Rickey, I think you're so brilliant at the AV side of things, the sort of audio visual, the visual side. So very complementary skills there, I think. And our job, like Rickey's, is to make sure that our clients have everything they need to get their message out there. Essentially, it comes down to storytelling. When you're involved in the work that we do, it's all about being a great storyteller, finding the way to tell a story that's going to captivate an audience. Those of you in the industry, or those of you who are trying to run a business, will know how loud it is out there at the moment, how difficult it is to get anybody's attention. So telling your story in a good way is the best way to cut through that noise. So my job is very much about creating written content, and leading my team. We're a team of 16, leading my team to be able to support our clients best and make sure that their story stands out in their sector to the clients that need to find them.
Jo, thank you very much. I think that your story is surely an inspiration. As I mentioned, one of the audiences that we have today are students. So surely hearing that many times we speak to students and we say, look, life is not only about getting a job, but creating your own opportunities. And surely your story will serve as an inspiration to those who will be hearing us and following us on this webinar. So thanks very much for sharing with us.
My pleasure.
So we are now going to the actual presentations on these topics, and I would like to invite Rickey to make his first presentation. Rickey's presentation will focus much more on the technical aspect and what it takes to make a social media campaign. So he's going to speak about understanding the insights of marketing through social media platforms. So I leave the floor to you, Rickey.
Thank you. Just going to try and share my screen. That should be working. All right, you can see it. Cool. So what I want to look at today is basically content marketing and digital strategy and how they all fit in together. So in my opinion, and of course, people may not agree with me on this, content marketing is a part of the marketing mix. So traditionally, we would have had a number of marketing tools at our disposal. And the more time's gone by, as Jo was mentioning, content has kind of like evolved and turned into this marketing platform in and of itself. So content is needed to generate and run every single platform that your business is on, or that your brand or company, or whatever it is trying to reach out to someone. You need a constant stream of content to be able to, first of all, cut through all the noise, again, as Jo was mentioning, and secondly, to align your brand with your audience's ideals and generate some sort of affinity between your brand and your audience. So let me jump in straight away. Before looking at content marketing itself, I want to start from the marketing basics. And this may be too basic for some of you. However, I want to start off from something which to me is the cornerstone of marketing, and that's the buyer's journey. So as a buyer, there has been developed a process over time, which has been kind of like scientifically proven, that the buyer goes through a number of processes before making a conversion or a purchase or whatever it is. Now, this may be different for some companies according to, or some marketing experts according to who it is you're speaking to. However, these 5 pillars, in my opinion, are kind of like universal to whichever industry you're working in and whichever platform you're on and whoever you're trying to reach. So awareness, in my opinion, is kind of like the biggest, the most widest reaching form of the buyer's journey. And this is where you're trying to communicate something to an audience, tell them about a brand, a product, an event. And this is where content creation would actually fit into the marketing mix these days. Other things which would fit here, as we'll see in the next slide, would be things like social media. It would be things like outreaching ads. Both of these tend to generate awareness and interest. Interest is kind of like one more step ahead, where you're creating an emotional engagement with your audience before moving on to consideration and conversion. So consideration is when a potential buyer is thinking about purchasing a product, and it's your job as a marketeer to bring your product to the forefront of their decision making. And conversion is actually converting their intent into an action. So conversion is the actual purchase itself. Finally, we have retention, which looks at basically making your customers feel special, outreaching to them as many times as is necessary to maintain kind of like a relationship and build these people into brand ambassadors or people who have an affinity toward you or your company, your cause later on down the line. And that's how I see the customer journey, the buyer's journey to function. Here's where I think everything fits into this whole funnel. So if you're looking at how it aligns with the marketer's toolkit, I see content marketing as the very top of the funnel. So this is the thing which is reaching out to the widest audience and is bringing in as much reach, engagement as possible. So the goal is at this stage is looking only at generating awareness about your product, about your brand, about whatever it is you have to sell. Next, we will be looking at display and video advertising, social media marketing. These are all things which tend to generate interest more than awareness. Further on down the funnel, we have paid search, you have search engine optimization, and the difference between these and what we've just mentioned is the difference in inbound and outbound marketing. So paid search and search engine optimization is looking at inbound marketing, which is warm, active leads. These people are going into Google, they're typing in your company name, they're actively searching for you. So those are very much in the consideration and conversion stage because they already know who they're looking for, they know what product they're looking for, and they're looking to convert as soon as possible. Whereas with social media and content, you're looking more kind of like outbound marketing. You're trying to outreach to these people and say, hey, this is me, this is my company, this is my product. What do you think? And that's where it kind of fits into the buyer's journey. And then when it comes to retention, we have tools like automation, email marketing, and analytics. Obviously, we don't have very much time today, so all we will be looking at would be the content marketing aspect. This is an example of how a buyer's journey would work and how they would go through all of those things that we just mentioned until finally purchasing a product and remaining a loyal customer. So for instance, let's say we're looking at hair products. They would first read an article about dry hair. That's content creation. Next, they would search on Google about how to fix damaged hair, or they would find a blog, come across perhaps a sponsored post or an ad or something like that. They'd read a brand, they'd read about a brand from their favorite blogger, or these days, obviously we have the influencers who make a very big splash. They would search the company, they would search your website, your reviews, is it safe to purchase, stuff like that. That come across a retargeting ad at this stage, which would take them back to the original landing page. They would perhaps buy the product in this instance. And then later on down the line, they'd receive a newsletter. How is our product? How are we doing? Would you like 10% off this next product? And this is kind of like how we tie in the marketer's toolkit with the buyer's journey. So focusing now on content marketing, keeping this buyer's journey in mind. Here's where I think content marketing fits into kind of like the whole marketing mix. We have a variety of tools. As a digital marketing specialist, we can use email, we can use paid, we can use website optimization, and all of these things have different aspects. So some of them are based on textual content, some of them are based on photographic, some of them are based on audiovisual, such as podcasts, such as videos, such as YouTube in general. So content marketing would fit into this mix. In my opinion, again, content marketing is the creation, publishing, and sharing of content with the aim of building brand reputation, awareness, and affinity. So those three things, brand awareness, reputation, and affinity, are the number one benefits you get from publishing content anywhere, whether it's on your website, whether it's on your social media channels. They're very much top of the funnel, as we were discussing earlier on. However, they help build your brand in a way which a simple sales ad or traditional advert can't. So these generating content is tying in your audience in a way that they're now your brand ambassadors, in a way that they have a big affinity towards your brand, and that, for instance, there's a reason why you would always buy the same brand of car, or you would always look at buying the same hair product, or you would stick to whatever it is. This is how kind of like content marketing, in my opinion, is the number one solution for actually building and developing a brand. So content itself, there are two types of content. I see it as you have topical content, which is the stuff that me and Joe used to do back in the day, which would be news content. It's time sensitive, it needs to go out ASAP. It has limited repurposing because it's useful now and it may not be useful 3 months down the line. Evergreen content is basically the opposite of that. It's content that has a wider relevance. You can leave on a website, on a blog for a long period of time, and it will remain there and it will remain useful to your audience. So for example, just to give you an example of this, a topical content would be such and such restaurant receives a Michelin star. That's news, that's big, boom, it's come out there and then it's relevant. However, an evergreen version of this would be, here are the top 10 restaurants you can visit when in Valletta, for example. And that's more kind of like content which would go on a blog and which would stay there for a number of months and would remain relevant until a few of them close or things change or the ratings change. But it's much more long-term in terms of longevity. Another thing I'd like to distinguish between is creating content and curating content. So obviously it's a pretty simple distinction. When you're curating content, you're using third-party content. So you're sharing content from news websites, you're sharing content from papers. It depends on your industry. It depends on who you are and who you're trying to reach. It's good because it involves much less effort from you as a company and as a brand to actually create content, because again, you're simply sharing content that already exists. Even though you could be curating content in a way that you're adding some spin on that content, or you're kind of like amalgamating content from different sources into one blog, for instance. However, it's still much less effort. And when I say effort, I'm referring to the investment of time, the investment of money, and the investment of actual physical effort to create something. So obviously, when you're creating content, you need the time, you need the money, you need the resources, you need everything to create content. Now, there's different levels of where you want to go with this content. However, it's definitely a higher resource investment when compared to curation, because you're creating something new. The benefits, on the other hand, are that it's completely yours. You have 100% ownership of it. You start to develop this credibility as a person who is creating content, who as a person or a company or a brand, who is aligned with what it is they're producing and promoting. Here are some types of content again. So basically we're just mentioning the different types of content. Textual is content from one area, which could go into a white paper, an ebook, a blog, articles, so on and so forth. And that obviously ties in with tactics such as public relations and so on. However, you also have content which is photographic or audiovisual. There's no correct answer to which content should I use, which one is better for my company, which one is correct, which one is better, basically. The general rule of thumb is that richer media tends to have better engagement the more time goes by. The more there's a bias toward audiovisual communication, such as video, podcast, and these kind of things. People are reading less and less. It's unfortunate, in my opinion. However, that doesn't take away from the value of written and textual content, as Jo was mentioning earlier on. So, for example, any search engine still bases most of its search algorithm on textual content within, for instance, your website or your blog or anything that you put online. So having good researched, large, interesting volumes of text anywhere still is relevant in 2021. Moving on, types of content. So here we're looking at how to create good content, basically. So this is universal. Back in journalism school, they always used to tell us, make sure you're writing as if you're speaking to your grandma. So it's nice and simple, it's relevant, and it's basically as condensed as can be. This is basically an evolution of that, where obviously you want your content to still be relevant, as we can see here. You want your content to still be personalized. So personalized, we're talking about engaging your customer in a way which through traditional media wasn't possible. So on TV and on radio, you can't be personal when reaching out to someone in particular. However, here in the digital world, you're allowed to actually include a person's name in a mail shot, for instance, or you can reach out to someone on social media and use their actual details. And not just that, you can learn about their background and make sure that your message is aligned with what it is they're looking for. Again, so moving on, creating good content involves that content being educational, so informative as much as possible, or entertaining, I like to say. In the world of TikTok, it's not always educational. Sometimes you just want to create content for the sake of making something a little bit silly, but these things go hand in hand. So either it's educational or it's entertaining. It should address needs and interests. And what I mean here is you need to ensure your content is meeting your customers' needs. Why should they take the time to watch what you're producing or read what you're producing? If it's going to waste their time, that could actually backfire and work against your brand in the long run. This is very important as a digital marketeer whose job relies on providing results, is including explicit call to actions. CTAs means call to actions. So at the end of any blog, any Facebook post, anything you produce, whenever relevant, obviously, not all the time, you should be including calls to action. So it could be anything like click here to visit our website, click here to learn more, click here to send us an email, get in touch, open up Messenger, whatever it is that your business goal is, your content should be aligning with that as much as possible so that you're generating leads at the end of the day, because you're trying to push people further on down the buyer's journey so that they get to the consideration and conversion stage. Finally, your content needs to demonstrate that you are the solution. So how can your brand, your product, you as a person or a company or service, solve the problems which these people are reading on, for instance? So if they're reading on dandruff shampoo, and you happen to be a dandruff shampoo company, it makes sense to create content about how to solve these problems and why they should choose you as a brand and purchase your products. Content marketing is a cyclical process, and this is very important. It's not a case of simply creating content, putting it out there into the world, and Bob's your uncle. That used to be perhaps in the past. but nowadays you need to create content which is tailored and going to have an impact on your audience. So the first thing you need to do is research. And by research, here at Keen, we use a number of tools such as auditing your competitors, for example, social listening to see what trends are going on at the moment, which hashtags are being popular, which topics are trending, segmenting your audiences. So who is your ideal client and how you should reach out to them. And that's research. Next on, we'd move to the planning stage where you're aligning your content with your business objectives. So what do you want to reach and how can you reach that through the production of content? Because let's not forget, whatever it is you're doing, you're always investing. So even if you're simply writing a blog, you're investing your time, you're investing your research, possibly you're investing your money if you're hiring somebody to actually produce that content for you. So unless you're receiving results at the end of the day from your investment, is there any point in doing it? So this is something which obviously comes down later on down the line when you're measuring whether your content was successful and when you're strategizing to see which type of contents worked in the past and could they be of use in the future. When it comes to content marketing, in my opinion, failing to plan is planning to fail. Now, we're not sure who actually said this. It could have been Benjamin Franklin. It could have been Winston Churchill. However, it's a very good quotation. So if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail when it comes to content. Here at King, we have developed kind of like our own system when it comes to planning content. So apart from creating content calendars, which are kind of like the industry standards, we first start off with doing what's called a content pillar exercise. So when developing content pillars, we would basically produce a spreadsheet similar to this, very simple. We're not looking at reinventing the wheel. However, we develop main categories that revolve around content, which could be useful to our clients. So this is an example of a skincare brand, which we were working with very recently. And we developed these pillars, which are the main categories, on content, which can, one, be produced, curated, and reused, and two, content which can be done time and time again, because these are journalistic ideas. So if I'm talking about promoting the most common use, which is by the sea in the case of sunscreen, I want to see, you know, family sea experiences. So I want to see people by the sea having fun, applying sun cream, and these are one type of content. But that type of content can be repeated several times. So you can go to different beaches, you can have different types of photo shoots, you can be using different products by the sea. So this is why we tend to develop these content pillars, because from these, many a time you can extract quite a lot of data. And from there, develop your content. I'm just going to move on quickly because we don't have much time. So content calendars themselves, you need to plan. To be able to produce, you need to always be one step ahead when it comes to producing your content. This is basically what I'm trying to say here. This is what a content calendar would look like. So we would split your content by channel. So on which platform is it going to go? It's going to be LinkedIn, Twitter, it's going to be Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever. And then it's a simple process of dividing that content by week. So if we're producing 3 posts per week, we're simply going to have a tab for each week, chuck in 3 posts and see where each of these posts are going to go. So we would have some text which would accompany the post itself. We would have done research on our competitors to see which kind of hashtags and which kind of like trending topics we're going to talk about and include in our content. And then which kind of media? So is it curated media from the parent brand? Is it something which was produced by us? And that's basically the only thing we do. We produce these kind of content calendars, and these are a vital tool when it comes to keeping on top of things in the long run, because what they do is you have all of these things ready. So you've done your content, you've done your creative, you've done your theme, your date, your time, your platform. You know from a month in advance where everything is going to be posted. Now, obviously, in some time-bound industries, this is not always possible, but this is done most of the time. So once you have all of these set, you have a number of benefits. You're preventing writer's block. So on the day, if you can't think about what to post, you already have your schedule, you're falling back on that, there's nothing to worry about. And it keeps, when you have time to focus on creating a content calendar from a month in advance, you can make sure that all your posts are designed in a similar way. They're communicating your brand in an integrated way, which makes sense on every single platform. And they're all aligned with your core concepts and what it is you want to communicate. Finally, just a small note about developing content is you always need to keep in mind who you're trying to reach out to with your content. So if you're reaching out to any kind of audience, you need to have, in my opinion, always a buyer persona. Now, a buyer persona is the ideal client who interacts with your business. So for instance, what do they behave? What do they behave like? Where do they go? What are their needs, their preferences? And this, again, can lead you to develop your content according to what it is that they like to do and where they like to go and who they are. It's a very simple exercise. It involves, obviously, quite an amount of brainstorming and going back into your historical research when it comes to who your clients are. But developing buyer personas helps you in the long run to have the ideal audience who you want to reach out to. And from there, you'd be in a position to, again, develop content according to their needs. Sorry for talking so much. I hope we're still on track. I thank you very, very much. And I pass the microphone over to Daniel. Thank you.
Thank you, Ricky, for this very interesting presentation. I'll now leave it up to Jo to talk about the importance of creating good content. She, having focused specifically on this area, I think she can give us very good insights about the subject. To you, Jo.
Thank you so much. Brilliant. Ricky, my goodness, I believe I agree with every single word that man has said. So listen to Ricky, guys. He knows his stuff. That was brilliant. And yes, to jump straight into my part of the presentation now, we're going to be talking about why you should care about content. And again, Ricky's underlined some seriously critical points there about why you should care about content, but I'm just going to double down on everything that he said and also talk a little bit about your own potential route into content creation. If you're somebody who's watching this webinar and thinking, you know, could this be a route for me? Could this be a career for me? Then we'll talk just a little bit about that as well. So first up, words are everywhere. And that's not something that's always been the case, right? So words have always been very important. Words have always been critical to storytelling. But if you jump back 20 or so years, some of you might not remember or have even been there 20 or so years ago. But 20 years ago, you know, words were in magazines, they were in books, and maybe they were on billboards, but they weren't absolutely everywhere. You have to appreciate how the internet has changed our lives when it comes to content. It's absolutely transformed the way we consume information. We are now looking at words and images and different types of content constantly. It's actually very overwhelming to think how much information we consume on a daily basis. But the good news for content creators is that words are everywhere. If you are somebody that wants to put the focus on content creation, if you are a business that believes in content creation, then you are going to thrive because they are everywhere and they are needed consistently. So I love words. I've always loved words. Back when I was at school, I was one of the students who didn't have a direction. I didn't really know what I was going to do. I was rubbish at school. Everywhere I looked, my peers and my friends knew what they were good at. They were good at maths. They were good at science. They were good at sports. I was especially bad at sports. And I had no idea what I was going to do. But I did have one teacher who said that she could read my stories every day. And I've never forgotten that teacher. Mrs. Briffau, you are my favorite. And she genuinely loved reading the little stories that I wrote as a 10-year-old. And I remember that gave me a lot of confidence and I learned to love words. And so I was the type of kid that was always writing little stories, poems, plays, and forcing them on all of the poor people around me. And as I grew up, I continued to develop this love of words. I love reading, I love consuming information in words. If ever I need to get something across, I will always write it down, because I'm much better at writing through something that I'm thinking about, rather than perhaps drawing a picture, terrible at painting, or presenting things in other ways. So I love words because they happen to be a great medium for me. But I also love words because they are a great way of communicating, and we need them. The world needs words so much in order to convey stories. So if you are somebody who has a natural sort of ability with words, then I would encourage you to sort of lean into that and find out how you can use them better. And that leads me on to how I use them. So today, I use words in a million different ways as part of our company here at Finesse. And I'll talk you through a little bit more about how you can use them. But essentially, we use them to communicate with our clients and on behalf of our clients. We use them in social media, in blogs, in articles, in magazines, in subtitles for films and video content. Many of you will watch a lot of audio visual on your phones, perhaps, but you might listen on silent. So you're consuming the words that are coming across in the captions underneath the text. And there's even a storytelling element to that part of the way we consume and the way we give content to people. So as you can see, words are everywhere. And if you know how to use them, if you are somebody that can really think cleverly about how to use words and use them to your advantage, then I guarantee your business or your career is going to thrive, because they are one of the most important things in the world. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about the reasons why content matters. And again, Ricky's done such a great job of introducing the topic. I loved what you said, Rickey, about the buyer journey and understanding the psychology behind who you're speaking to. So listen to everything Rickey said on that. That was critical information if you are going to be using content. But one of the first things, and again, as Rickey said, one of the first reasons why content matters is that it establishes your brand. So when we're talking about a particular client, we will talk about something called their tone of voice. And the tone of voice is very much about the type of words that you use for your brand. It has to match. What type of brand are you? Are you a funny brand? Are you a serious brand? Are you corporate? Are you talking to children? Are you talking to older people? Are you talking to other businesses? And the words that you use will help to establish your brand. So as much as possible, when we're creating content, we have a tone of voice that is shared with our team. And that helps us to be cohesive. It helps us to have one tone of voice. That when we're creating content, perhaps for a luxury hotel, every post, every blog post, every article that we write feels like it's them. It feels like it's them speaking. And again, that comes back to what Rickey was saying about sort of personalizing your content in a way that feels natural to the brand that you're creating it for. So again, Apple would communicate in a very different way, perhaps to Emirates. Now, it's true they're very different brands, but still Apple would communicate quite differently to Microsoft, perhaps. And understanding the types of words that a brand would use and how they would use them is a very good way to establish your brand. And that leads into the important point that establishing your brand will make it memorable. Okay, it's critical if you have a business and you're trying to establish yourself. By creating a brand around that business, you are going to make it memorable. Okay, because it's less about product and it's more about a brand and people connecting with that brand in order to want to buy from it. The second reason that content matters is to tell your story. Now, again, I've spoken a little bit about storytelling and how critical that is. I am a StoryBrand certified guide. That will probably be nothing to anybody on this call, but it's an American storytelling framework. And if you are interested in storytelling, if you are interested in branding and having success in getting your story across, I encourage you to read the book StoryBrand by Donald Miller. He's one of my business mentors. He's an absolutely fantastic storyteller. And the reason telling your story is important is because as human beings, we connect to stories. Stories are something we have told for millennia. Okay, it's one of the constants about us as human beings. Do dogs tell stories? I don't know, probably not. But as human beings, we tell stories, and knowing how to tell them for your brand is something that's going to connect you to people who could potentially use your brand. So again, once you've established your brand and you've established what it is you want to say, then words and content are going to give you an opportunity to tell your story to the wider world. And in doing so, help to connect like-minded people or your ideal clients to that story. Next up is that you become an authority with content. And this is something we really strive for with our clients. Again, in a really busy space where there are billions of people potentially competing to sort of get the business that's wanted, becoming an authority in the space, becoming that go-to person or that go-to business for something is very important. So do you want to be the go-to business as a spa? Do you want to be the go-to authority on EU funds? Do you want to be the go-to person on social media? It doesn't really matter what you want to be the authority on, but content can really help you to become that authority by sharing your opinion, by sharing your expertise, and making sure that people know you as that person. And you can only really do that with content. And again, it doesn't have to be written content, it could be audiovisual content, such as videos, could be social media, could be LinkedIn articles, could be having your own YouTube channel. It doesn't really matter what type of content you have, but in taking the step to become an authority in your space, you're going to need content in order to achieve that authority. Next up, another reason why content matters is, of course, SEO. Now, we bandy SEO about a lot. It's one of those, phrases that we've been using for years. And I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Nobody knows all of the secrets of SEO. It's one of those mysteries of the universe, but we do know quite a lot about it. And we know that content plays a very critical part, along with tech, along with back-end technology, along with loads of other things that you have to get right in your SEO campaign. But we know that SEO is helped very much by having a consistent content strategy. So much like Rickey was explaining about having a content calendar and making sure that you're targeting different platforms and that you're using your content cleverly across a number of different ways, that is going to boost your SEO. And in boosting your SEO, essentially all that's going to happen, for anybody that doesn't know what it means, SEO means search engine optimization. Often a client will call me up and say, "Hi, Jo, I want to be #1 on Google." Okay. Everybody wants to be #1 on Google. How are we going to do that? SEO plays a very important part in becoming #1 on Google. Although, again, everybody wants to be #1 on Google. You're not just going to get there by luck. You're going to need to have a consistent, clever, and authoritative content calendar, just like Rickey showed you there, and a bit of a plan to help you get aspects of your business onto that first page of Google. So yes, if you want to have great SEO, then it all starts with content. And then the final thing is that content will help you get more leads. Ultimately, websites with a blog attract 55% more traffic. That's absolutely huge. And they actually get a 13 times return on investment. Okay, so if you have a good content strategy, you're more likely to get 13 times more business than you would if you didn't have a content strategy. And I know from our own business, we are consistent with creating content. We have a content strategy, and we know that when we do it well, when we do it consistently, when we do it cleverly, when we talk to our clients, our ideal clients, we know that leads come in without us having to do anything else, because we've boosted our SEO, we've become the authority, we've told our story, and we've established our brand. And that means that people in the space, potential clients, trust us. Okay, so those are, to me, the 5 main reasons why content matters. And then there are lots of different types of content in the world. But I know when I talk about content, sometimes people are a bit like, what does that even mean? What even is content? Where is it? Where do I find it? How do I create it? If I want to be a content creator, what type of content do I create? And do I need to create all types of content? Whoa. No, you don't need to create all different types of content. No, you don't need to do all the content at the same time. That can be very expensive for businesses. But you can take a look at the different types of content that exist out there and decide, okay, that's for me. I'm going to focus on that. I'm going to do it really well. I'm going to do it consistently, and I'm going to do it well enough that I get a return on my investment. And that investment could be paying an agency like mine or Rickey's to sort of come in and create that content for you. Or potentially, if you're a small business and you want to do it yourself, then it's putting the time investment in becoming really great at creating your own content. So the first type, of course, is web pages. Pretty much every business will need a web page, especially if you're selling something online. You will need to have a variety of landing pages within your website, perhaps for different products that you sell or for different services that you offer. And so the content for web pages is very important. And I think something that you'll see as I present the different types of content is that they are all different. So the way you write on a web page is not going to be the way you write in a social media post. It's not going to be the way you write in a blog post even. So understanding the different types of content and the way that they're going to be consumed by your audience is a really big part of getting your content correct. So first type of content is web pages. Second would be blogs and articles. Articles I tend to think of more of in print. So you'll see an article in a magazine, you'll see an article in a newspaper, or potentially on a platform like timesofmalta.com, independent.com.mt. And then a blog post is going to be more on your own media, or perhaps you could submit it as a guest blog on somebody else's blog. Really great for SEO. And really great for sort of driving traffic to your website, talking about a topic that will give you authority. So again, if you are a small business, you have a blog, as we said, a blog attracts 55% more traffic to a website than a website without a blog. So it's a very valuable place to put your time and investment. And you can write about anything, as Rickey said there. You can literally talk about what matters to you, and it can help you to attract your ideal clients. Then public relations. This is a space that I am particularly passionate about. We are a PR agency. We love PR. We love getting public exposure for our clients, and that could be anything. It could be articles in magazines. It could be features on the news. It could even be content that comes about as a result of organizing an event. We recently organized the premiere for the wonderful film Lutsu that some of you might have seen. And so a lot of content went into creating everything that was visible to the public from that premiere. Photos, videos, blogs, articles, etc. And public relations is great because it's often other media talking about your brand, which is what separates it from blogs, articles, web pages, and the stuff that you created yourself. And research shows that any content that is created on a media separate to your own is going to really boost your authority, because people want to see other people talk about you as well as you talk about yourself. It's more trustworthy when other people talk about you, which is why reviews have become so important in recent years. Testimonials have become so important. That's all about getting other people to talk about your brand. Then I don't need to say too much about this because Rickey has said quite a lot, and obviously it's his area even more than it's ours. Audiovisual content. So we create a lot of content, particularly scripts that then go to be picked up by an audiovisual agency. So we will do a storyboard and we will create a story that will then be filmed or perhaps go into a podcast. Podcasts have become such an important part of storytelling and content building at the moment. Perhaps a YouTube channel or whatever it is, but you could create audiovisual content. One of the challenges with audiovisual content is that it's not currently SEOable, so it's quite hard to find. When you're talking in a video, the content is not picked up, although there are brilliant ways around this, and YouTube and other channels are getting so much better at giving you opportunities to put SEO and put other written content which can be found. It can be scanned by Google and other search engines and help you to be found for your content. So yes, audiovisual is critical to a wider content strategy. And then of course, social media, another one of the big mysteries of the universe. Social media, something that didn't exist 15 years ago and now which is everywhere and such a big part of our life. And who knows what's going to be next. We've had MySpace and Bebo, and then we had Facebook and Instagram, and now we're of course on TikTok, and who knows what comes next. Social media is one of the fastest changing parts of the the internet and your content strategy, and the rules change. The biggest challenge to me of social media is that you don't particularly own your content. It's very much up to Facebook and Instagram to decide who they're going to show your content to. And it can sometimes feel like a mystery. Why did that post get 300 likes? Why did that post get 10 likes? It can be very frustrating for brands. And of course, when you come to an agency, we have a strategy. We know the latest algorithms. We know the latest updates from the different social media. But it's where social media and blogs, for instance, differ, because with blogs, with web pages, you have a little bit more control, but you do need social media. It's still the biggest place where we consume content, where the world consumes content. So as you can see, those are the various types of content that exist in the world. And there are more, of course, but those are the main ones. And having a campaign that cohesively includes all of these elements is going to give you the best possible chance of your brand standing out. And just like Rickey said, having a plan, whatever that plan may be, how simple that plan may be to get you started, having a plan and sticking to that plan is going to be the best way to create content that works for your brand. Now, I know there are some students potentially watching this today who might be thinking, you know, where do I start with content? And there are brands on here today thinking, where do I start with content marketing? So just to give you some quick tips on the content marketing front, if you are a brand and you're thinking, okay, Rickey and Jo, you've persuaded me that I need content marketing and I need to start today, then my first tip is to do what Rickey said and to create a plan, to start thinking about the kind of content that you want to create, that you're happy to commit to. Bear in mind that creating audiovisual content is probably going to be more expensive than focusing on creating social media content or blogs. And whichever it is that you decide to do, commit to that, even if it's once a week or once a month. Create a plan and stick to it. That is the best thing that you want to do. And then the second thing is to, just like Rickey said, understand your audience and where they're going to be. So it's pointless creating content for Facebook if your user is not on Facebook, if your ideal client is not on Facebook. We talk a lot about the term ideal client, and essentially an ideal client is who's my client? Are they a woman in her 30s who's got young children for whatever reason, or is it a couple in their 70s who are looking for a relaxing place to spend their retirement? Who knows? But those are very different people, and they are going to receive their information in very different ways and in very different places. So before you start your content, understand who your client is and where they are going to be hanging out. Because it's pointless creating content for LinkedIn if you're not dealing with a business client. It's pointless creating content for TikTok if you're not dealing with a young, hip person who loves consuming video content. So think very carefully about where your audience hangs out and then create content accordingly. So those are my 2 quick tips. My next thing is, could you be a content marketer? I hope so, because the industry needs content marketers. It's one of the biggest growing spaces. So if you are a young person who's thinking, could I do this? I like words, I like video, I like creating content, I like telling stories. Okay, that's great. You probably could be a content marketer. And what I would encourage you to do is think about, first of all, your favorite way of telling stories. Are you a video person? Are you a writing person? Are you an audio person? Could you have a podcast, say? And then get really good at it. The good thing about being a content marketer is that there is a lot of work out there. As I say, it's one of the most in-demand jobs of the moment. But the difficult thing about being a content marketer is that everybody thinks they can do it, and that it is quite hard to get an education in the space because things are moving so quickly. So even the courses out there are sometimes obsolete before they've even come to market. So what I would encourage you to do is think about how you like telling the stories that you want to tell, and then get really good at a niche part of telling those stories. So become the best person at writing social media posts, or become the best person at coming up with video ideas for TikTok. And then perhaps get an internship with an agency and try to start getting real world experience. I know a really successful young girl of 18. She's already working full-time on her own. She's built her own content agency. She's doing really well, fabulous stuff, working with amazing big brands. It can be done. It's all about creativity. It's all about becoming very good at what you do. It is the kind of industry where, like I say, everybody thinks they can do it, but very few people can do it well. So like with any career, I encourage you to just become really good at understanding the trends, understanding what your clients need, and then getting these skills to match to be able to serve your clients. And that's it. My name is Jo. I'm the founder and CEO of the Finesse Group. I'd love you to follow us at by Finesse Group on Instagram. And if you have any questions beyond today, we'd be so happy to answer them. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jo. It was a very interesting presentation indeed, and with useful tips for our students. So now, and also for those who want to pursue a career in this sector. So I know that we are running out of time, but I'll open the question and answer session. So anyone who wants to put your questions, even through our social media, please feel free to do so. We have our first Q&A, which is, what is the, I think it can be addressed by Jo in this question. What is the minimum age of becoming a content creator and getting paid as a content creator? It's a very interesting question.
It is a great question. Well, funnily enough, I wrapped up with an example there of an 18-year-old girl that I know about who is getting paid. I'll be honest and say I don't know the legalities of ages. Ricky might, but I don't know legally at what age you can create content. So I know within Facebook, I think you have to be 13, don't you, to have a Facebook account or something like that. So I think obviously there's an age limit from that perspective, but the beautiful thing is that we are natural storytellers. So if you, as human beings, so if you feel that you want to tell stories, and that's how you want to spend your time, and you want to get great at doing that, I don't think there's a limitation on age. I think you have to be 16 to work in Malta. I think is that right? But beyond that, if somebody's willing to pay you for your work, I don't think that there's an age limit to how old you need to be to start. Maybe just start getting a portfolio together of the kind of work that you'd like to do, and just make sure you're creating work in a space that is safe for you, and that you're working with people who have your best interests at heart. And beyond that, go for it. Very exciting.
Thank you, Jo. Another question addressed to Ricky now. What analytics would one need to check to effectively see that you have an effective campaign?
Okay, that's a very wide-ended question. So if we're looking at content, again, in terms of, so content is very much top of the funnel, in my opinion. So the main analytics when it comes to top of the funnel to generating awareness or reach would be indeed reach, is a very good metric to go by. Impressions would be another one. So the difference between those two, which generally I find many businesses tend to get confused by. Impressions is the number of times your content was served, so how many times it was actually viewed on screen, versus impressions, versus reach, excuse me, which are the actual number of people, individual people who saw the content. So generally impressions is higher than reach. Reach could be 1,000, impressions could be 500. Sorry, I'm mixing it up. Impressions could be 1,000, reach could be 500, which means that every person saw your post 2 times. I hope that's clear. So reach is individual people, impressions are the number of times your content was served. These are useful metrics because they show you how interesting your content was, number one, to the algorithm, and that it was shared here and there in different places. And number two, how many people actually saw your content in the long run. Another metric, which is slightly more down the line in terms of a funnel, would be engagement. So after seeing your content, how many people actually clicked on the like button or on a share or sent it to their friend or copied the link and pasted it? So that would be the number of engagements that your post had, which is generally much lower than the first 2 metrics I've just mentioned, but that would give you a good idea of engagement rate. And from there, you can kind of like deduce whether or not your content was interesting or not, and whether it was made up of kind of like rich media or textual media or photographic media. And from there, you can develop a content analysis and in future say, yes, I'm going to use more of this content because it worked in the past, I had a higher engagement rate, and less of this content because the engagement rate was lower.
Thank you, Ricky. Quite some questions we have. But we have one which is addressed to both Jo and Ricky, and said, Jo, Ricky, yours are surely interesting careers. I'm a student and I'm interested in this career. Is there anything one would need to study to prepare himself for this type of career when it comes to formal education, I think?
Shall I jump in, Ricky, and
Go
start?
ahead.
Sure.
Go
So there is no set route into content creation. Honestly, it's at the industry is changing so fast that some very formal courses at university level, I say again, will be obsolete by the time you would finish a 4-year course. So I would encourage you personally, I mean, a good grounding if you want to go to university is always in wider communication. So understanding, journalism and everything around communication is a great place to start. But personally, if you want to get started in this sector, I would be looking at short courses from companies in the space. So people that are actually out there doing the content creation for clients. And there are some brilliant ones in the States, in the UK. I'm sure there are great courses in Malta as well. So looking at short courses that are going to give you a real burst of specialized skills in the area. And then, to be honest, this is an industry that's all about learning as you go and actually learning from the stuff that you try and make yourself. So I would encourage you to be creating your own portfolio of the kind of projects you want to be working on and learning as you go. So to be creating projects not for clients or not for university or just for yourself, the kind of stuff you want to do. And it's a try and learn as you go kind of process. That would be my advice to that one.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So I basically have nothing to add to this. It makes complete sense. And obviously, the way things are constantly changing, the most important thing you can have is to show that you're capable of doing this work and that you're capable of adapting when the time needs you to. I mean, I graduated in communications in 2012, and since then, my dissertation was done on videotapes. So since then, like, things are changing so much, you just have to be able and willing to adapt and constantly learn.
So thank you very much. To Jo, this is addressed. What do you think is the best public relations aspect that needs to be developed by a business entity?
Okay, I don't fully understand the question. So if you want to follow up.
I think I'm trying to interpret the question would be, if one had to take public relations, they mentioned the element of public relations. What is the element that you think would be one would need to focus most on when developing public relations for a company, for example?
Of course, great question. So PR is an absolutely huge industry, and the outcomes are huge. What you have to understand with PR is that there are 2 types of media: paid for media and earned media. Paid for media is when you pay to secure the space on the platform that you want to appear on. So again, you want to appear on Love in Malta, you want to appear on Types of Malta, you want to appear on Taste and Flair magazine. You can buy the space in order to be able to appear. And while it isn't cheap to do that, it means that you can tell the story in the way that you want to tell it. And it still gives you the exposure on the platform that you want to appear on. Earned media, on the other hand, is the holy grail of public relations. That's when you tell a story in a way that the media, the platform, again, let's use Love in Malta as an example, say, wow, that's an interesting story. We are going to feature that story. One of our journalists is going to write about that story. And that, like I say, is critical because it's organic. You're not paying for it. And what that comes down to is finding what we call a spin on the story, an angle on the story, a piece of news that is seen as valuable to the media. So if you are a brand, if you are a business, then I would encourage you to try and focus on creating news. Maybe you could hold an event, maybe you could create some statistics, do some research in your space. That means you are going to have something to share with the media. That means you're going to get the exposure you want, but at the same time, you're doing it in a way that is actually newsworthy. I could talk about this all day. I'll stop there. But yes, earned media is the route you want to go down, but it means making an investment in creating something that is news.
So we have quite some questions coming in. A question, I don't know it does not have to whom it is addressed, but I think you both can answer it. How often do you suggest Spun posts on their social media as an average?
This is one we get from clients very often. Many people tend to ask us, how often should they be posting? And the truth is, there's no right or wrong answer. What I would say is quality over quantity always. Make sure that what you're posting makes sense and is relevant and is timely and engages your audience. Otherwise, don't post it. Don't post just for the sake of posting because I have to make 3 posts a week. Otherwise, the algorithm is going to throw me out of the window. It's, to be honest, Facebook and Instagram are not your friend. It's in their interest to sell advertising space. It's in their interest not to get your post out to as many people as possible. So the base truth of all of this is that the algorithm, let's take a Facebook page, for instance. If you have 1,000 followers and you post regularly, maybe 3 times, 4 times a week, you're lucky to be reaching 10% of your audience, of those 1,000 people who are actually following you, let alone a wider audience. So in saying that, it's good to post often, and different social media platforms do encourage it. For instance, on Instagram, it's much more encouraged to post more often. LinkedIn is a completely different story, for instance. But it's more important, again, going from a technical algorithm point of view, that you're using all aspects of that social media platform. So on Instagram, rather than posting 5 times a week, you could be posting 2 times a week, but then adding 2 stories a week, and then posting 1 reel per week, and then trying to do something for IGTV, because the algorithm is going to realize, oh, this guy's trying to create as much content using as many different assets of my platform as possible. And they will reward you in kind of like page rank, it's called. So it's kind of points. They're letting you reach a wider audience. That's from a technical perspective. But from, I'm sure Joe will agree with me, from a content perspective, quality over quantity, always.
Nothing to add. He said it all.
So now this one is for Rickey. In your presentation, when you spoke of curation, you mentioned community input. What would this exactly mean?
All right, so community input in this case would be any kind of input from your current followers or people who are engaged with your business. Just to give you a small example, it would be a photo competition, for instance, where you produce a post on Facebook. You're asking viewers to send in their photos in exchange, for example, for a prize or for something that could help them. And then in regards to that, you would use their content. You would have rights to use their photos to produce and use for your own. So that's basically community generated input. It could be the use of a hashtag. So if you're out at a concert, it will be hashtag concert name, use it as much as possible, and then we would extract as much of that content as possible and use it in our own streams.
Joe, I think would have to leave us. Joe, thank you very much. We'll follow with the other questions with Rickey, I think. But I thank you, Joe, for your input today. It was amazing. Thank you very much. For even for me, it was kind of groundbreaking. So I thank you very much. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you. I'm sorry I have to jump off. There's a lady coming to paint a sign on my boat. That's all I can say. And she's standing outside the grate. So I'm sorry I have to go. But guys, it was lovely. I think it was great to bring all of this together, and I hope it's been useful. And yes, hope to see you all again and get in touch if you have any questions. Bye, everyone.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bye, Joe. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Rickey, you have a question. I work in a very technically oriented field. And he said, I'd like to boost my brand awareness, but I feel like the learning curve, because it takes so much time, making it more difficult to get good content. Do you have any additional tips other than just planning ahead?
So when you're working in a technically oriented field, I'm rereading the question at the moment.
Yes, thank you.
So this person is considered with the learning curve required for content writers to pick up kind of like the information that's needed and be able to disseminate that to their audience in question. What I think would make a big difference would be either learning yourself, obviously, if you have the time, money, and resources to do so, to be able to produce this content and put it forward yourself as an individual. However, if the content is too technical in the first place, should it be published on these social media platforms that we're mentioning and trying to reach a wider audience? Or should it be more the stuff of more, I don't know, white papers or more, in-depth blogs, which would be related to the industry much more in depth than going on social media? If that's the case, could your information be simplified enough for it to make sense on social media? This is kind of the way you need to approach things, because, and this is going to answer the next question as well, where we have a small micro enterprise who's doing everything themselves. If you don't have the time, the money, and the resources to spend on producing content that's needed to go out on these platforms, but your business is operating at 100% capacity anyway, good luck to you. You don't need to do these things in the first place. However, this will, one, gear you for future expansion, and obviously put you in a better position to be able to position your brand within the market. So the higher up you could produce content which is relatable to your audience, the more it'll make sense for you to become this kind of like point of information. So to answer both questions, when it's hard to outsource your content, you can do it yourself. There are a number of things to learn. Writing content is a skill just like any other skill. It doesn't yes, there is an amount of talent that may go into producing content. However, it's all a process of learning the skills to create content. And when it's not possible to do that yourself, there are always methods. I mean, we've worked with some really difficult industries where I astound myself at the things I'm writing sometimes. However, there's always ways of simplifying this content that's being produced by the brand and trying to reach a wider audience. So working with a professional agency most of the time, they will have the resources needed to either hire in-house or contract people with the skills to write what you need them to write. And from there on in, they'll be able to create any type of content, whether it's audiovisual, whether it's textual, to be able to cater for your business needs.
So the last question, I think. Okay. Should I follow people or wait to be followed?
Okay, that depends on who you are and what it is you're doing. And when it comes to the kind of like the platform itself, the only time a follow and unfollow strategy works sometimes is on Twitter. So what you'll be doing in that instance is following a bunch of people in the hopes that they'll follow you back. And through there, you're trying to generate your own audience. I recommend against this for a number of reasons. One, the people you're following who are following you back are either not really interested in what you're doing. They're just kind of like returning the favor. So are they really relevant to your business, and should they be following you back? And two, it tends to be shadow banned. So a shadow ban is when the platform realizes that you're doing kind of like these below the belt tactics. And in the long run, you could end up with a profile ban or not being able to access your account and stuff like that. So I would always recommend not doing this kind of follow to unfollow and these kind of tactics. What you want to do is grow your audience organically by producing good content, by being trendy, being on topic, possibly being viral whenever there's the opportunity to do so, and then reaching out to the widest audience possible. So from there, your audience will grow naturally. And when that's difficult because the audience is too niche, I would rather take the money and spend it on some ads to make sure that your content is reaching the most relevant audience possible than wasting all of your time following and unfollowing people in the hopes that you grow your audience. We can't hear you, Daniel.
The second question, when having a broad concept and hence more than one buying persona, what strategy would be best? Perhaps different posts to different personas? What are your suggestions?
Yeah, so when you're trying to reach a wider audience, first of all, make sure that your brand is aligned with each of those audiences. And would it make sense for you as a company, speaking from an overarching perspective now, would it make sense for you as a company to separate into sub-brands possibly, to be able to cater for and reach these different personas? If not, yes, it'll simply come down to creating content which is relevant to both of these types of personas, where as long as they're not conflicting, as long as you're not saying red and then blue all of a sudden, you should be able to reach out and apply to both of these personas. The only thing then is if you're going to spend some money on boosting or reaching out to a wider audience, make sure that it's targeted so that this content is going out to the relevant audience on this sector, and this content is reaching a relevant audience in this sector.
So let's go to the final question now. Thanks, Ricky, a lot for your patience, but we have written, thanks, Ricky and Jo, for your impressive presentations. I write for a very sensitive and emotionally charged industry. Any tips on how to get the message across without watering down content or drawing attention for all the wrong reasons?
No, I wouldn't water down content in any way, shape, or form. You don't need to. The truth is that there's an audience for any kind of content online. So if you're making a noise, whether it's good or bad, they used to say that there's no such thing as bad press. So if you're making a noise where you're getting bad coverage, there's a reason for that. It's because people want to stop you or slow you down or censor your topics, as has happened many times in the past. However, keep doing what you're doing, as long, obviously, as it's safe to you and your family, because there's always an audience for whatever it is you have to write. The one thing I would say in this regard is make sure that whatever you're putting forward is factually correct, backed up, with as many journalistic principles as possible, so that it's factually correct, it's checked by somebody before going out live, it's proofread, because when you're under such fire, any little slip up is obviously going to be, could have much bigger repercussions in the long run. However, I wouldn't offer anything else. Just keep on doing what you're doing, and make sure you're reaching out to people who care about the content that you're producing.
So Rick, thanks for your patience. Do you have time for one last question?
Sure, no problem.
So what would interest the audience? An example of a type of content that is trendy as of lately?
Okay, so this again is a broad question. Your audience is going to depend on which platform they are, on who you are as a business, and it depends on who you're trying to reach out to in the long run. However, in that regard, again, at the moment, audiovisual, and not just because I produce it, it's because it's true, audiovisual content is very much on fire. So you'd look at the engagement rates that we get when producing content for clients. A simple textual post or a post with a picture would have 100 engagements, whereas a video would have 600 to 700. I'm not saying just by producing a video, you're going to explode. However, video tends to be the preferred medium when it comes to even the algorithms giving you preference to reaching a wider audience. Having said this, make sure that whatever you produce is of good quality, is relevant, and most importantly, Jo definitely would agree with me if she were here, would tell a story. So story is the number one thing which ties us all together as human beings. It's been happening for thousands and thousands of years, and it brings us all together. So a story, whether it's emotional, whether you're playing off of something which is funny, which is sad, which makes people angry, make sure that your video elicits emotion and puts forward a story so that that would tie in with your brand, aligns with your brand values in the long run, and would generate what's called brand affinity. So these people watch this video, they're emotionally attached to you. They're like, that brand makes me smile. I'm going to go out and buy their products because every time I watch their videos, I giggle. You know, these types of emotions where you're trying to create a connection on the root emotion of human existence. And it just makes sense for you and for your brand in the long run.
Thank you very much, Rickey, for your patience and for being able to be with us today. And I would like to thank Jo as well, who could not continue with us till the end. Thanks very much. They were really very interesting presentations, and I think that is I think this webinar was very good both for companies and students, because we spoke about what it takes to be in this field. So excellent presentations, both Rickey and Jo, and thank you, Rickey, for continuing beyond what we planned. But it seemed that this webinar generated a lot.
It seemed to be quite interesting to everyone who was involved. The one thing I'd like to add, obviously, is if we have students watching us today, or if there are any businesses which have questions, please do feel free to get in contact with me. I mean, you can search us online, Keen Limited. We have student placements. We give internships to students. At the moment, I think we have about 5 students interned with us. So there are plenty of opportunities for you to gain this experience and go into the industry with a real world portfolio, which would obviously help you in the long run when it comes to later on in life. Thank you very much, Daniel, for inviting.
Thank you, Rickey. As I said, digital transformation is one of the topics of discussion of the Conference of the Future of the European Union, and surely this webinar has presented various topics for our discussion today. So a great big thanks to Rickey and Jo, who both did this interesting presentations voluntarily, and I want to thank them so much for their input. Finally, I would like to thank, as usual, Richard. Richard helped us make the contacts, and he helped us shape this idea, and he is helping us as a chamber also, and as Europe Direct office on our way of digital transformation. So thanks very much. Thanks very much, Richard. I would like also to thank our intern, Gianluca, who prepared the artwork for today's webinar. Thank you very much, Gianluca. I would like to thank also Marlene Muscat, our Europe Direct manager, and a special greeting goes to her, Marlene. We miss you so much here at the office, and we hope to see you again. So a great big thanks to all of you who are following us, and any event, follow us on social media and hope that we will be able, because we are planning to do similar topics on this area. So thanks very much, and keep following Europe Direct. Thank you very much.